3 words, that's all it took. 3 words, snapped at a 61-year-old woman under the studio lights, and Ray Calloway did something he had never done in 22 years of hosting the Family Face-Off. He took the microphone out of his own hand, gave it to her, and refused to take it back. Not when her husband reached for it. Not when she tried to return it herself. Not for the rest of the show. What nobody in that studio knew, not the audience, not Ray, not even the man's own children, was that those 3 words weren't what they sounded like. They were hiding a secret buried for 41 years. And before that taping ended, it was going to come out. 1 broken syllable at a time. Before we get into it, do me a favor and hit that like button and subscribe, because this channel brings you a story like this every single week, and you do not want to miss the next one. Now let me tell you about Coach. In Waxahachie, Texas, you don't have to say Ronnie Stubblefield's whole name. You just say Coach, and everybody knows. 31 seasons of Friday Night Football. 218 wins. 3 decades of grown men who still straighten up a little when he walks into the diner. Ronnie was 64 now, retired 4 years, and famous for one thing above all the wins: the man could talk. Pre-game speeches, booster dinners, grocery store aisles, Ronnie Stubblefield filled every room he ever stood in, wall to wall, with words. People in Waxahachie joked that Coach had never once been interrupted, because nobody could find a gap to do it in. His wife could have told them the truth about that. His wife knew more about gaps than anyone alive. Carleen Stubblefield was 61, and for 33 years she had been the speech teacher at Marvin Elementary, the room at the end of the hall where the kids who stuttered went. The kids who had quit raising their hands because raising your hand means talking, and talking had become the scariest thing in the world. Carleen was magic in that room. Parents cried in conferences with her. Kids who hadn't spoken all year gave book reports in the spring, and above her little mirror hung one rule, written in marker, that every child in that school could recite: slow is allowed. And here was the thing the whole town had never found strange. The woman who spent her days teaching children to be heard was, by Waxahachie's general agreement, the quiet one. At church, Ronnie talked, and Carleen nodded. If you asked her a question at a potluck, you'd get 4 words out before Ronnie's voice came in over the top like a marching band, and Carleen would fold her hands and smile. And everyone assumed that was just Carleen. Shy, sweet, quiet, her daughter Wynn, 33, a labor and delivery nurse, had stopped assuming that around age 15. Her son Tug, 36, an assistant coach himself, had never questioned it once, and was starting to do it too. And Carleen's younger sister Reba, 58, who cut hair and heard everything in town worth hearing, had spent 40 years biting her tongue about her brother-in-law, on account of a promise Carleen had made her swear to and never explained. Because there was something about Ronnie Stubblefield that only one living soul knew, and she had guarded it since 1983. They told people they met at a football game. That was the story, polished smooth by 4 decades of telling, Ronnie's telling, always. Big game, homecoming, he saw her in the stands, the rest was history. It was a nice story. It was not true. The truth was a small room in the basement of the communications building at the university, on a Tuesday evening in October of 1983 after hours, when nobody would see him come in. Carleen was a junior working the campus speech clinic, and in walked the star linebacker, the biggest, loudest man on campus, who shut the door, sat down across from a 20-year-old girl with a clipboard, tried to say his own name, and couldn't get it out. Ronnie Stubblefield stuttered. He had stuttered since he was 6 years old. He had been laughed at in the 3rd grade in front of the whole class. One specific afternoon he could still describe down to the weather, and he came out of it with a plan he then executed for the rest of his life. Never leave a silence anywhere near yourself. Talk first. Talk loud. Keep the words moving like a man running across thin ice, because a stutter lives in the pauses. It waits for you in the quiet at the front of a sentence, and if you never stop moving, it can't catch you. The booming voice, the man who couldn't be interrupted, none of it was confidence. It was a fortress. Ronnie had been sprinting away from 6-year-old Ronnie for 58 years, and the whole town called it charisma. Carleen figured that out in the first 10 minutes, the way she'd later spotted in 7-year-olds. Over that fall, twice a week, she taught him what she would spend her whole career teaching. Easy starts. Breathe first. Slow is allowed. He never fully lost it. Nobody does. He just learned to run faster. And somewhere between October and Christmas break, the linebacker and the girl with the clipboard fell in love, and before he proposed, he asked her for one thing. Don't ever tell. Not your sister. Not our kids. Not anyone. Ever. And Carlene, 20 years old and in love, promised. She kept that promise for 41 years. And here is what it cost. The part Ronnie never let himself add up. Every time he felt a pause coming, his kind of pause, the dangerous kind, he filled it with whatever words were nearest. And the nearest words, for 41 years, were usually the middle of his wife's sentence. So when Wynn signed the family up for the family face-off, her mother's 4 o'clock show, the one Carlene watched with her grading folder in her lap every weekday of Wynn's childhood, Ronnie treated it like an away game. He ran practice sessions at the kitchen table. He informed the family that he would handle the talking parts, and Carlene packed her good blue dress, said almost nothing, and on the plane looked out at the clouds with a small private smile that only Reba noticed. The Stubblefields drew the Beaudry family of Lafayette, Louisiana, 5 loud, happy Cajuns, who hugged them before the game like they'd all grown up on the same street. And when Ray Calloway walked out in his gray suit and the applause rolled through the room, Ronnie leaned down the podium line and told his family, "Let me do the talking with the host," and did not notice, because he had never once noticed, that he had said it directly over the top of something Carlene had started to say. The first half of the game went the way Ronnie had drawn it up. He was quick on the buzzer, big with the crowd. He introduced his own children before they could introduce themselves. He answered a question Ray had aimed at Reba, and Reba let it slide, the way she had for 40 years. When Carlene won a face-off with the #1 answer, a casserole dish on things you loan a neighbor and never get back, Ronnie applauded louder than anyone. Told the audience, "That's my girl," and then explained to Ray what she'd meant by it, at length, while Carlene stood beside her own answer like a woman standing beside her own suitcase, while someone else told the customs officer what was in it. Ray watched all of it. 22 years had made him fluent in families. He could read a podium the way Ronnie could read a defense. And what he was reading, round after round, made his smile do that thing longtime viewers knew, where it stayed on his mouth but left his eyes. Then, between rounds, came the small talk, Ray strolling the podiums, teasing somebody's job, asking somebody's story. He stopped in front of Carlene, and maybe it was on purpose and maybe it wasn't. But he asked her the one question in the world that Ronnie Stubblefield could not allow to be answered. "Carlene," Ray said warmly. 61 years young, married 40 years to a Texas legend. "Tell me something. How'd a nice lady like you end up with all this?" He waved his hand at Ronnie like a man gesturing at weather. The audience laughed. "How'd y'all meet?" And Carlene, maybe because she was 200 miles from Waxahachie, or maybe because 41 years is simply a very long time, did not reach for the polished story. She smiled, took a breath, and started telling the true one. "Well, actually," she said, "we met at the university. I was a junior, and I worked evenings in the speech, let ME talk." It came out of Ronnie like a whip crack. Loud, sharp, ugly, snapped hard enough that the boom operator flinched. Hard enough that a lady in the 3rd row said "oh" out loud. Hard enough that Carlene stopped like she'd walked into a glass door, and then did the thing. The folding of the hands, the small smile at nobody, the stepping back from the door. "We met at a football game," Ronnie said into the silence. "Too fast. Homecoming, 1983, 3rd row yellow dress. Rest is history. Ray, we gonna play or we gonna? Hold on." Ray Calloway had not moved. He was still looking at her, not at Ronnie, at her, and the whole studio watched him take a long, slow breath, the kind a man takes when he is deciding something. Then, he did it. He took the microphone out of his own hand, the handheld with the show's logo, the one that had not left his grip on that stage in 22 years, and held it out to Carlene Stubblefield. "Ma'am," Ray said, "this is mine. It's yours now." Carleen stared at it. "Oh no, honey, I couldn't." "Take it." She took it, the way you take something from a man whose voice sounds like that. It sat in her hand like a bird. "Now here's how the rest of my show is going to work," Ray said, and though he wasn't holding a microphone anymore, he was heard. "That right there is the only microphone this family has got. From this moment until the confetti falls, every word the Stubblefield family says on my stage comes through her." "Coach," and Ray turned to Ronnie for the first time, "calm as a lake, you want to talk on my show. You raise your hand, and you ask your wife for the mic. If she wants to give it to you, that's her business. And if she don't, that's her business too." The audience came up out of their seats, not laughing, cheering, the way a crowd cheers a penalty flag they'd been begging for. Ronnie's face went past red. "Ray, come on now." "I didn't mean it like," he reached across the podium for the microphone, an automatic reach, the reach of a man who had been handed every microphone in Ellis County for 30 years. Ray stepped between his hand and his wife without hurrying, the way you'd step between a child and a stove. "No, sir, Ray. No, sir. I gave it away. It's not mine to take back." He looked at Ronnie a moment longer, and his voice dropped into a register that didn't play to the cheap seats, that was almost private. "And I don't believe it was ever yours." And then came the thing 40 million people would watch on their phones by Sunday. Carleen, flustered, kind 41 years deep in a habit, held the microphone back out toward Ray. "Honey, really, I don't need. I'm not much of a talker." Ray Calloway put both hands behind his back like a soldier at ease and shook his head, gentle as a Sunday. "Ma'am," he said, "I've been watching you not need things all afternoon. You didn't need your answer explained. You didn't need your story finished. You didn't need your turn." He nodded at the mic in her hand. "That's the first thing anybody's handed you all day. I'm not taking it back, and I'm not letting him take it back, and I'd appreciate it if you quit trying to give it away. Some things you keep." So they played the fourth round under the mic rule, and for 6 minutes it was the funniest thing that stage had seen in years. Ronnie Stubblefield, a man who had not waited his turn since the Carter administration, stood at the podium vibrating with unspoken answers, and when he knew one, he had to raise his hand, like a schoolboy. And Carleen, 33 years of classroom instincts waking up at once, would look over her glasses, let one full second pass, give him the little nod her second graders would have recognized anywhere, and pass the mic. The audience howled every time. When Tug blurted an answer out of turn, Carleen turned the school teacher look on her own son, and Tug apologized to his mother on national television, and Reba said, "Lord, 30 years I've waded directly into the mic when it passed her," which nearly ended the taping. And the strangest thing was happening on the scoreboard. The Stubblefields were pulling away. When the family's answers had to travel through Carleen, a beat of quiet before every response, instead of the fastest voice winning, the answers got better. Carleen herself nearly ran the board alone on things in a school nurse's office, and when she cleared it with a sticker for being brave, number 1. 42 points. The audience gave her a standing ovation that had nothing to do with points. Ray let the game breathe. Then, before the final round, he came back to her, hands still behind his back. "Carleen," he said, "you've got the mic, and we've got a minute. A while ago I asked you a question and you didn't get to finish it. I'd like to hear the end of that sentence. You were a junior at the university, and you worked evenings in the speech. What?" The studio went still. Carleen's hand tightened on the microphone, and down the podium, Ronnie Stubblefield made a sound, not a word, a sound, and every camera found his face, and his face had no red left in it at all. It was white. "Ray," Ronnie said. "Please, coach, you know the rule. You want to talk, you ask her." And Ronnie Stubblefield, 218 wins, turned to his wife of 40 years in front of 200 people, and raised his hand and asked in a voice nobody in Waxahachie would have recognized, "Carleen, can I have the mic?" Here is the moment people argue about online. She could have said no. Everybody watching wanted her to say no. 41 years of interruptions had built up in that room like floodwater against a dam, and 200 strangers were ready to watch it break over his head. Carlene looked at her husband for a long, level moment, and then she walked down the podium line, and she put the microphone in his hand, and she said, quietly, but the mic caught it, "Easy start, Ronnie." Nobody in the audience knew what that meant. One man on that stage did. Ronnie lifted the microphone. He opened his mouth to do what he had done for 58 years. Outrun it, get moving before the quiet could catch him. Homecoming, yellow dress, rest is history. And for the first time since the 3rd grade, in the one silence in America he could not fill fast enough, it caught him. "We he said, and stopped. His jaw worked. We. 200 people went silent at the same speed Ronnie's sentence did. He stood there, 64 years old, gripping that microphone with both hands, fighting his own mouth in front of God and Texas and 40 million eventual strangers, and the fortress of 58 years came down in about 4 seconds. Which is how long these things take. "Take your time," Ray Calloway said quietly. "Ain't nobody got anywhere to be." And Carlene Stubblefield set her hand flat on her husband's chest, the way she had done in a basement room in 1983, the way she had done 10,000 times since behind closed doors where no one could see, and said the words that were taped above the mirror in the speech room at Marvin Elementary. "Look at me. Breathe first. Slow is allowed." And slow, with his wife's hand on his chest and his children staring like they had never seen him before, because they hadn't, Ronnie Stubblefield told the truth. "We met," he said, wrestling every word across the line, "in the speech clinic. At the university. 1983. B basement of the communications building. Tuesday nights, when and nobody would see me come in." He stopped. Breathed. Nobody moved. The word fought him, and he did what Carlene taught her 7-year-olds to do, dropped his shoulders and walked at it slow. "I have stuttered since I was 6 years old. My whole life. There was a day in 3rd grade. There was a day. And after that day I made myself one rule, and I have kept it for 58 years. Never be quiet. Never leave a gap. If I'm talking, it can't catch me. It lives in the pauses, Ray. It waits for you right at the front of a sentence. So I don't have pauses. I have not had a pause since 1972. He looked down at the microphone in his hands. "Everybody thinks I'm a big talker. I'm not a big talker. I'm a scared runner, and I have been running my whole life. And the woman standing next to me is the only living soul who knew it. Because I made her promise. 20 years old, and I made her swear she'd never tell. Not her sister, not our kids. And she never did. 41 years. You want to know why she's the quiet one? Because every time I felt a pause coming, my kind of pause, the kind that would have told on me, I grabbed the nearest words I could find to fill it, and the nearest words were always hers. Every time I cut that woman off, church, supper table, this stage today, I wasn't trying to shut her up. I was trying to save my own hide, and I spent her voice to do it. For 41 years I paid for my hiding place with her sentences. His voice cracked clean through. And when you asked her how we met, and she got within 2 words of that basement, I panicked, and I snapped at the finest person I have ever known like she was a rookie jumping off sides. On television. That's what let me talk was, Ray. It wasn't let me talk. It was don't let them hear me. The studio was silent the way a church is silent. So, Ronnie straightened up, and turned, and looked at his wife. "Carlene, I'm answering the man's question and then I'm giving you back the mic. And I mean for good. We met in a speech clinic, where you taught a scared kid that slow is allowed, and then I spent 40 years proving I never learned it, and making you carry the secret and pay the toll both. You kept a promise for 41 years that I had no business asking for." He held the microphone out to her, flat on both palms, like something ceremonial. "I'm sorry. Take your mic. I'll wait my turn. I got a lot of practice to catch up on." Carlene took it. She looked at him, 61 years old, 41 of them spent folding her hands. And 200 people watched her decide what the last word of this would be. "Ronnie Stubblefield," she said, "that is the first time since 1983 you have ever stood in a pause and let it happen. I have waited my whole married life to introduce you to the quiet. She smiled, and her chin shook, and she didn't hide it. It's nice in here, isn't it? I've been keeping it warm for you. The ovation ran so long the producers later admitted they cut 90 seconds of it for time. The Baudrys were crying. The boom operator was crying. Ray let it run, and when it settled, he said the only thing that needed saying, folks, we still got a game show happening here, believe it or not. Carlene, it's your family. Who plays the big money round? Everyone assumed she'd play it herself, and the crowd started chanting her name. But Carlene Stubblefield had spent 33 years in a small room at the end of a hall, and she knew something about scared talkers that crowds don't know. The worst thing you can do for one is keep protecting him from the microphone. Ronnie plays, she said. The audience gasped. Ronnie's head snapped up like she'd called a trick play. And I'll go first and get us a lead, because Lord knows he'll need one. Biggest laugh of the day. But he plays. 60 seconds on a clock, in front of everybody with all his pauses showing. She looked at her husband. Time to practice in public, coach. She went first, and she was, of course, a machine. 109 points of quiet. Precise efficiency, which left Ronnie needing 91, alone at center stage under a ticking clock, the worst environment on earth for a man with 58 years of hiding a stutter, which is exactly why his wife had put him there. What happened in that 60 seconds is hard to describe to anyone who hasn't seen the clip. Ronnie blocked on the very first answer, locked up hard, jaw fighting him, 4 full seconds burning off the clock, and 200 people leaned forward and did not make a sound, and you could feel the entire studio holding still for him. A whole room full of strangers deciding at once that this man would have all the quiet he needed. He dropped his shoulders. Easy start. He got it out. Then, the next. He stuttered through that round openly, unashamedly, for the first time in his life, no sprinting, no filling, walking straight at every word, and with 4 seconds left, needing 32 points, he hit the last question. Name something you'd give somebody who's struggling. Ronnie Stubblefield stood in the pause. And then he said, clean and slow, time. Number 1 answer. 41 points. The board exploded, the confetti came down, and the Stubblefield family fell on him from every direction, and through all of it, the cameras caught Ronnie saying something into Carlene's hair that the mics barely picked up, and that closed captioners around the world would transcribe by Monday time. Turns out, that's all it ever took. You've been giving me yours for 41 years, $20,000. But nobody, including the Stubblefields, remembers the money. At the sign-off, Ray Calloway came to center stage, and for the first time in 22 years, he closed his own show without a microphone in his hand, because his was still down the podium in Carlene's, exactly where he intended to leave it. Folks, he said, just projecting. An old-fashioned man in a gray suit talking to a room. Tonight you watched a man find out that the thing he ran from for 58 years couldn't survive 1 minute of people willing to wait for him. Maybe somebody in your house talks too much. Maybe somebody in your house has gone quiet. I'd invite you to get curious about why, because it is usually not the reason you think. He nodded down the line. Carlene, close us out. Take all the time you want. And Carlene Stubblefield raised Ray's microphone and said, this is the family face-off. We'll see you next time, and remember what it says above my mirror. Slow is allowed. Then she paused. 1 full, luxurious, unhurried second on national television, just because she could. That pause was mine, by the way. I've got 41 years of them saved up, and I intend to spend every one. The episode aired on a Thursday, and by the weekend the clip was everywhere under a 3-word title, Slow is Allowed. It was shared by speech therapists, by grown men typing I've been running too and nothing else, by wives who sent it to husbands with no comment, and by a surprising number of husbands who sent it to wives with the only comment that mattered. Is this me? Calls to stuttering support organizations tripled that month, driven, the organizations said, almost entirely by men over 50. In Waxahachie, the famous voice at the diner got slower on purpose, and if you listen close now you can hear the hitch in it, because Ronnie quit hiding it and it turns out a stutter you're not hiding is about half the size of one you are. Every Thursday morning, a man with 218 career wins sits in a child-sized chair in the room at the end of the hall at Marvin Elementary and tells a rotating audience of 7-year-olds the truth. I hid mine for 58 years. Don't you dare do what I did. It ain't the stutter that costs you, it's the running. Speech referrals stopped carrying shame in that district almost overnight, because how embarrassed can a kid be about the room where coach hangs out? At Sunday dinner at the Stubblefield house there is a new tradition. In the middle of the table sits a foam microphone windscreen, the actual one, because when the family tried to return Ray's microphone after the taping, Ray told the stage manager, in full earshot, "What microphone? Man can't lose what he already gave away." Whoever holds the windscreen at dinner has the floor, no exceptions, and Ronnie's self-imposed rule is that he hands it to Carlene first every single Sunday. Tug, who caught himself talking over his own wife a month after the taping, and heard his father's voice saying I was spending her sentences, now passes it to her first at his own table. Some inheritances you're glad to see interrupted. And Ray got himself a new microphone, obviously, but the crew will tell you he picked up one small habit after the Stubblefield taping that he's never dropped. When a family gets loud on that stage now, when the fast voices start swallowing the slow ones, Ray Calloway doesn't say a word. He just walks over, calm as Sunday, and holds his microphone out toward the quietest person at the podium. And then he waits. He'll wait all day. The man has become famous for it. Because that's the whole lesson of that Thursday in the studio. The 140 million people felt in their chests. Some people talk over you out of contempt. But some people talk over you because they're drowning, and your sentences are the nearest thing floating, and either way the answer walks in the same door. Somebody has to hand the quiet one the mic, and somebody has to refuse, kindly, patiently, immovably, to take it back. If this story got to you the way it got to that studio, do two things. Hit that like button and subscribe right now, because next week's story is already on its way, and you don't want to scroll past it. And then find the quietest person at your table, tonight, this week, and hand them the mic. Don't take it back too fast. Slow, as a wise woman in Waxahachie has been saying for 33 years, is allowed.